Do you know who I am? My father's money builds the library in this town. I don't stand in lines or queue. Funke leaned forward angrily and replied him, "Your father built a library, but it seems you did not read any book about good manners. In this shop, I am the one who decides you eat and who stays hungry. And right now, you look very hungry for something money cannot buy. Get to the back, you rude customer."
The sun over Abeokuta does not just shine, it shows off. By 10 a.m., the heat was already dancing on the road, making the distance look like a blurry pool of water. But in the heart of the city, hidden in a corner where the old brown roofs of the Egba people stand close together like they are whispering secrets, there was a different kind of heat. This was the heat of the firewood. Funke wiped the sweat from her face with the back of her hand. Her face was glowing from the steam coming out of a massive black iron pot. She didn't use a gas cooker. Gas is for people who are in a rush to eat food that has no taste, she would always tell her younger sister Bisola. Funke believed in the slow, smoky magic of a real wood fire. She was 26 years old, with skin as smooth as dark chocolate and eyes that could see through anyone standing in her queue. To the people of Abeokuta, she was Funke Amala. To the big men who drove all the way from Lagos just to taste her gegiri, she was a local legend. But to herself, she was just a woman trying her best to survive and make sure her brother's school fees were paid on time. "Customer, how many?" Funke asked. Her voice was steady, matching the way she turned the heavy wooden stirrer, the omorogun, into the thick, dark amala. "2 amala, extra ewedu, and 3 round fish," the man in front of her replied, already licking his lips in anticipation. Funke served him with the focus of an expert. She didn't use a scale, but every wrap of amala she dropped was exactly the same size. As she handed him the plate, a loud, angry honk broke through the noise of the market. A black Range Rover, polished so bright you could see your face in it, was trying to pass through the narrow street. It looked like a spaceship that had landed in the middle of a village. People scattered, grumbling under their breath. The area boys began to whistle, knowing a big fish had just arrived. Funke didn't even look up. She just kept staring at Pod. "If that car hits my firewood, that driver will have to explain to God why he's sleeping outside tonight," she muttered. Inside the Range Rover, Kunle Adewale was losing his cool. The air conditioning was freezing, but he was still sweating from stress. He had adjusted his expensive silk tie, which cost more than what an average person earns in a whole year. "Baba Kyode, why did you pass this place?" Conley snapped, checking his gold watch. "I have a meeting in 30 minutes. If I'm late, these people will think I'm useless, just like the newspapers are saying." The driver, an old man who had served Conley's father for 30 years, looked through the mirror and smiled calmly. "Oga Conley, a tanker fell on the main road. This is the only way out. Besides, you haven't eaten anything since you flew in from London yesterday. You look like a man who is fighting a war with himself." "I'm not fighting a war. I'm fighting to save my father's name," Conley whispered, though he didn't want the driver to hear that the family was almost broke. Conley was the London big boy of the family. 10 years ago, his father, Chief Adewale, had sent him to the UK to study. Conley had stayed there, living a luxury life and appearing in magazines, completely forgetting the red dust of Abeokuta. But his father's sudden death 6 months ago had revealed that the family business was crumbling. The company was in heavy debt, and Conley had been forced to return to a country he no longer understood.
"Look, Oga," Baba Kayode said, pointing to the crowd gathered around a small smoky stall. "That is Funke's place. If you eat her food, your brain will reset. You will find the solution to your problems inside that ball." Kunle looked at the store. He saw the plastic stools, the black pots, and the woman standing in the middle of the smoke. Suddenly, he felt a jolt in his chest, a memory from a long time ago. He remembered a girl in a faded school uniform, a girl he had once mocked and disgraced just to make his rich friends laugh. "No," Kunle said, his voice becoming hard. "I don't eat street food. It's dirty." But just then, the scent hit him. It was the smell of local locust beans, slow-cooked palm oil, and perfectly fried meat. It was the smell of his childhood. It reminded him of his grandmother's kitchen before she died. His stomach gave a very loud and embarrassing growl. "Fine," Kunle groaned. Park the car. I'll give it 5 minutes. But if I get a stomachache, Baba Kayode, consider yourself fired. Kunle stepped out of the car, and the heat hit him like a physical blow. He walked toward the store, his polished Italian shoes making noise on the gravel. People moved out of his way, not because they respected him, but because they were wondering who this alien was. He walked straight to the front of the line, passing a pregnant woman and an old man with a walking stick. "Give me your best plate, quickly, I'm in a rush," Kunle said, pulling out a crisp 1,000 naira note. The woman at the pot didn't move. She didn't even look up. She just kept serving a small boy who was holding a plastic bowl. "Excuse me," Kunle said, raising his voice. "I said I'm in a hurry. I'll pay double the price." Funke stopped stirring. She slowly placed the wooden turner against the side of the pot. She wiped her hands on her apron and finally looked him straight in the eyes. The silence was heavy. Funke's eyes were like fire. She didn't see a billionaire. She saw the mean boy who back in 2014 had stood on the balcony at school and poured cold water over her head while calling her the canteen girl's daughter. "The price of Amala here is 500 naira, Funke said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "and the price of respect is free. Go to the back of the line, Kunle Adiwale." The crowd gasped. Someone in the back whispered, "Wait, she knows his name." Kunle froze. "Do you know who I am? My father's money built the library in this town. I don't stand in lines." Funke leaned forward, the heat of the fire between them. "Your father built a library, but it seems you didn't read any book about good manners. In this shop, I am the one who decides who eats and who stays hungry. And right now, you look very hungry for something money cannot buy. Get to the back." Kunle was completely disgraced. He looked at his Range Rover, then at the people laughing at him. He should have left. He should have driven away and never looked back. But the smell of that geberi was calling to a part of him that was starving for something real. To the shock of his driver and everyone at the market, the billionaire turned around and walked to the very end of the long queue, standing behind a mechanic whose clothes were covered in engine oil. Kunle stood in that line for 45 minutes. Every minute felt like an hour. The mechanic in front of him kept looking back, smelling Kunle's expensive perfume, which was slowly mixing with the smell of fried fish and firewood smoke. Kunle's phone was ringing non-stop, calls from lawyers and people he owed money. But for the first time in his life, he ignored them. He was focused on the way Funke's hands moved as she served. When he finally got to the front, the sun was very hot. Funke didn't say a word. She took a clean ceramic bowl, one she usually kept for special guests, and started the work. She scooped a mound of amala, soft and steaming. Then came the geberi, that yellow, smooth bean soup that looked like liquid gold. She added the dark green ewedu and a big spoon of stew that had been cooking for 6 hours. She placed a massive piece of bukoto, cow leg, and a strip of shaki, tripe, on top. 3,000 naira, Funke said, without any expression on her face.
"But you told the man before me it was 500, Kunle complained, even though he was already pulling out his wallet. "The food is 500, Funke replied, looking him straight in the eyes. "The lesson on how to have patience is 2,500. Do you want it, or should I give it to the woman behind you?" Kunle handed over the money without saying another word. He took the bowl to a shaky wooden table in the corner and sat on a blue plastic stool that made a loud noise under his weight. He didn't have a fork. He looked around and saw everyone eating with their hands. He hesitated for a second, then tucked his expensive silk tie into his shirt, washed his hands in the bowl of water, and took his first bite. It was like an explosion in his mouth. The heat of the pepper, the taste of the amala, and the richness of the soup hit him like a memory he had forgotten. He wasn't in a dusty market in Abeokuta anymore. He felt like a 6-year-old boy again, sitting on the kitchen floor with his grandmother, before he went to London to start eating cold salads and acting big. He ate until the bowl was completely clean. As he stood up to leave, he saw Funke watching him from behind the steam of her pots. She didn't look like she was mocking him. She just looked like she was thinking. "It's different when you work for it, right?" she called out as he turned to go. Kunle paused. "It's the best thing I've eaten in 10 years, he admitted, his voice low. Then he climbed back into his Range Rover and drove away, leaving a cloud of red dust behind him. The next 3 days were a total nightmare for Kunle. He sat in his father's old office, surrounded by heavy bookshelves and dusty awards. The Adewale Group was now just a shadow. His father had taken huge loans to build a luxury city that was only half finished on the edge of town. The local workers hadn't been paid in months, and they were threatening to burn the whole place down. Sir, the leader of the workers' union is here, his secretary said. He says if they don't get 50 million naira by Friday, they will lock the gates and nobody will enter. Kunle rubbed his head. He had only 5 million in the company account. He looked out the window at the hills of Abeokuta. He felt a sudden, strange need to be back in that smoky market stall. He wanted to hear Funke's voice, not because she was nice to him, but because she was the only person in the whole city telling him the truth. He didn't take the Range Rover this time. He took a local taxi, wearing a plain t-shirt and jeans. He didn't want to be the billionaire. He just wanted to be a man who was hungry for answers. When he arrived, the shop was closing. Funke was cleaning the large pots, her arms shining with water and sweat. She looked up and saw him. She didn't look surprised at all. "You are late," she said. "The gagiri is finished." "I didn't come to eat," Kunle said, sitting on a wooden bench. "I came to ask why you hate me so much. I know I was a jerk in school. I know I was a spoiled brat. But you look at me like I'm a criminal." Funke stopped scrubbing the pot. She sat down opposite him, the smell of soap and smoke between them. "I don't hate you, Kunle. I pity you. You spent 10 years learning how to be a big man in London, and you came back thinking you can buy the love of people you don't even see. You call those workers laborers. I call them my uncles, my cousins, and my neighbors." Kunle felt a cold chill. "The workers, you know them?"
This is Abeokuta, Kunle. Everybody knows everybody. They aren't stopping work because they hate your father. They are stopping because they can't buy food for their children. And while they are starving, they see you on Instagram throwing money away at clubs in Lagos. How do you think they feel? Kunle stayed at the stall for 3 hours that night. They didn't talk about love or romance. They talked about business. Funke told him how the market really worked, how the market women had more power than bank managers, and how a bowl of Amala could settle a fight better than a lawyer. "I have an idea," Kunle said, his eyes finally shining with hope. "The luxury city project is failing because it's for people who don't even live here. But what if we change the plan? What if we build a modern market with solar power? A place with cold storage for farmers and clean stalls for sellers. I have the land and the buildings. You have the trust of the people." Funke looked at him, trying to see if the old Kunle was still there. She didn't find him. Instead, she saw a man who was finally looking at the ground instead of the clouds. "It will take more than a plan, Kunle. It will mean you getting your hands dirty, for real." The next morning, the billionaire was at the construction site by 6 a.m. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing heavy boots. He called a meeting with the workers. He didn't stand on a high platform to talk down to them. He sat with them on the floor, eating Amala that Funke had brought in big coolers. He told them the truth. "I don't have all your money today, but if you help me finish this market, you won't just be workers. You will own part of it. This will be our city, not just a statue for my father." The men didn't believe him at first, but then they saw Funke. She stood by Kunle's side and nodded. "He's telling the truth," she said. "And if he lies, I will make sure he never tastes my food again in his life." The men laughed, and for the first time in 10 years, the sound of work started again at the site. The work at the site was like a miracle. Those half-finished buildings were turning into the Olumo Hub, a modern market that looked like the future, but still felt like home. Kunle was there every single day. His skin was getting darker under the hot sun, and his smooth London hands were now rough from hard work. He and Funke were now a team that nobody could separate. Their business meetings usually turned into long walks through Abeokuta, where Funke taught him about local herbs, and Kunle told her his dreams of a successful Nigeria. But while they were happy, trouble was coming from Lagos. Kunle's mother, Chief Mrs. Adewale, arrived like a heavy rainstorm. She had heard that her son was playing house with a common food seller. She cornered Kunle in his office, her expensive lace outfit making noise as she moved angrily. "Kunle, have you lost your senses?" she screamed, throwing a newspaper on the desk. The headline said, "The billionaire beggar Adewale Air seen selling Amala. The company board is panicking. They think you've gone mad. You are supposed to marry Sandra, the minister's daughter, not hanging around girls who smell like locust beans." Kunle said, his voice very quiet but firm. "And she smells like the truth, something I haven't smelled in this family for a long time." His mother didn't stop there. That same afternoon, she sent her security men to Funke's store. They didn't just talk, they turned over the pots. The special gebiri that Funke spent hours cooking was poured into the dirt. They poured water on her firewood and ruined everything. When Kunle arrived, he found Funke standing in the middle of the mess. She wasn't even crying. She was just staring at her empty, broken pots. I told you, she whispered as Kunle ran to her. The lion and the goat cannot play together. Your world is too violent for me, Kunle. I will fix this, I promise, Kunle said, his heart breaking into pieces. You can't fix a broken heart with a checkbook, Kunle. Go back to your mother. Go back to your big life. Just leave us alone.
After his mother's men destroyed the shop, Kunle didn't go back to his air-conditioned office. He went to the construction site, picked up a shovel, and walked until his hands were bleeding. He realized that all the billions in the world couldn't buy back the respect in Funke's eyes. Late that night, he drove to Funke's family house. He didn't stay in the car like a big man. He sat on the bare ground outside her door. When Funke came out at 4 a.m. to start her work, she almost tripped over him. Kunle, what are you doing here? She asked, her voice sounding tired and sad. I'm not leaving, Funke, he said, standing up slowly. My mother thinks she is protecting me by hurting you. She doesn't know that you are my life now. Without you, I'm just a man with money, but no home. He reached out and took her hands. I spent my whole life looking for high-class things in London and Dubai. I didn't know that the only thing I needed was the woman who told me the truth over a plastic table. I love you, Funke, not despite who you are, but because of who you are. Funke looked at him, the moonlight showing the tears in her eyes. Kunle, we are from two different worlds. People will talk. They will say I trapped you because of your money. Let them talk while we eat, Kunle whispered, pulling her into a tight hug. In that moment, it didn't matter who was rich or who was poor. It was just two people who finally found where they belonged. The grand opening of the Olumo Hub was not a boring corporate event. It was a huge party for the whole city. But the best part wasn't the ribbon cutting. As the sun was setting, making the sky look purple and gold, Kunle took the microphone. He looked at Funke, who was standing in her brand new modern kitchen in the middle of the market. Everyone knows me as Chief Adewale's son, Kunle started, his voice going far across the crowd. But for the last few months, I have been a student. I was a student of a woman who taught me that you cannot build a big house if the ground is soft. You have to be real. He walked off the stage and went straight to Funke. The whole place went silent. He didn't pull out a fancy ring box. Instead, he picked up a clean, empty Amala bowl. He knelt down on one knee in the red dust of the market, right in front of her. Funke, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. I don't want a slay queen or a business deal. I want the woman who saw me at my worst and still gave me food. I want to build a life where every morning starts with your smile. Will you marry a man who is still learning how to be good enough for you? Funke couldn't even breathe. She saw her mother in the front row, and instead of frowning, the woman was wiping a tear from her eye. She saw her neighbors shouting for joy, but mostly she saw that the boy she used to hate had become the man she truly loved. Yes, she whispered. Then she shouted so everyone could hear. Yes, Kunle, but you are still washing the pots on Saturdays. The crowd went wild. Kunle stood up, carried her, and spun her around while the music started. It wasn't a formal dance. It was a happy, local dance of two people who had finally found home.
1 year later, the Adewale Funke brand had become the most famous food business in the whole of Nigeria. But that wasn't the real prize. The real victory was in the quiet moments they shared. On a cool evening, Kunle and Funke sat together on the balcony of their new home, looking out at the lights of the city they had helped rebuild. There were no expensive silver plates or fancy foreign wines on the table. Instead, right in the center was a single large bowl of Amala and Gebiri, just like the one that brought them together. Kunle cut a small piece and fed it to Funke. She laughed, her wedding ring catching the light of the candles. So, tell me the truth, she teased him. Is the taste up to your billionaire standard? Kunle smiled and kissed her hand, his heart finally at peace. It's perfect, he whispered, just like the woman who made it. They weren't just a success story anymore. They were a love story.
They were a reminder to everyone that in a world full of fake people and big grammar, the most powerful thing you can be is yourself. And the most beautiful thing you can ever find is a love that tastes exactly like home.